Good morning, all. We'll now begin our Q&A. As a reminder, we're joined today by Chancellor Carranza, Dr. Katz, Acting Sanitation Commissioner Edward Grayson, Deputy Chancellor for Early Childhood and Student Enrollment Josh Wallach, and Senior Advisor Dr. Jay Varma. The first question today goes to Jill Jorgensen from New York One.
Hey, Mayor, thanks so much for taking my question. So on the admissions issues, I guess a question, I understand the rationale of middle schoolers being younger and not wanting to use their test scores from, third grade for middle school applications. But I guess I'm hoping you can expand on why you're leaving academic screens in place for high schools when you're getting rid of them for middle schools, and also whether you think that this change for middle schools will be permanent or if it will be just 1 year.
I'll start and turn to the Chancellor. The change is for the next year, but we're going to continue to evaluate, and we're going to see what happens next as a result of COVID, what happens with state tests and other factors. So we're going to look for the potential of other changes depending on what we see happen in the next few months. This is a step in a bigger process. There's no question about it. We need a lot more change when it comes to admissions, but we want to do it based on the facts and the circumstances. So I think the simple answer on high school versus middle school is middle school just wasn't viable. There was no way to do fair evaluation with a screen system this year. High schools, there's more factors to deal with for this year. That may not be so true going forward, but for this year, we still thought it was true. Chancellor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think you hit the nail right on the head. So, Jill, we just have more longitudinal data for high school students. As I mentioned, for middle school students, we would be having to use data where third grade test scores, that's the first year they sit for the state summative test. So it's just not educationally sound, but we do have other data points for the high schools, and that was factored into the decision.
Go ahead, Jill. Jill?
And, thank you. And on a completely different topic, last night there was some guidance issued by the SLA regarding restaurants and bathroom access for patrons at restaurants who are dining outside, saying that they shouldn't be allowed to the restroom so quickly.
Mistake. I don't know the nuances of how it happened. That was a mistake. Go ahead.
The next is Christina Vega from Chalkbeat.
Hi, Mayor and Chancellor. Thanks for taking the question. So it sounds like there are not any specific integration measures that are being put into place to replace screening or the district priorities. And so without those, do you hope or think that meaningful change towards integration is possible?
Yeah, Christina, I think there's very clear movement here. The minute you go to a lottery system and you're encouraging anyone and everyone who's interested in school to apply, and we're going to be doing that. We're going to be out there encouraging kids to know about all their options, helping parents know about all their options. I think that clearly has a diversity impact. When you're inviting schools to end their screens entirely, and we'll support them if that's what they choose to do, that has a diversity impact. If you're saying to districts, as we have seen so successfully, District 1, District 3, District 15, that grassroots diversity efforts have a tremendous lasting impact. We want to support them in doing that. We know it's already had a huge impact, and the more districts that participate, the better. And I really believe when you get a community dialogue going, when through the local school board, people engage and understand how you can have better and better schools and more diversity in the classroom at the same time, that's actually what creates lasting change. So all of that is baked in here. And as we said, based on what we see in the coming months, vis-a-vis standardized testing from the state, et cetera, more changes are available to us as we go forward. Go ahead, Chancellor.
Spoken like a true local school board member, sir.
I'm a believer. I'm a believer.
Yes to everything the mayor said. In addition, it's important to understand that this isn't just one moment in time. We have 5 districts that currently are actively engaged in the diversity planning process. Over 4 years, as the mayor has announced, we will have all 32 districts that will have engaged in a community-based diversity development process as well. And then the sheer fact that when you remove barriers, and New York City has had open enrollment for years, but it's never truly been open because you've had a series of screens that have locked certain kids out of those opportunities. At the middle school level, we now will truly have open enrollment. And that in and of itself will allow just a greater number of students to look at schools that perhaps they wouldn't have looked at before.
And one other point, really important, because I talk about when I was what we used to call community school board, when I was there in District 15 years ago, now community education councils, the CCs. I just want to thank everyone who's a member of the CCs. It takes a lot of work. It is not, not easy, tons of work. People give of themselves for free to do this work. Makes a huge lasting impact. The fact is, when you engage community leaders and they really have a dialogue with the community, you get the best possible outcome where people get it, they feel it, they know they were part of it, and it has lasting impact on change. We really want to foster that. Go ahead, Christina.
Well, I'm just thinking about District 1, which had the first city or district-wide diversity plan for its elementary schools. They had a peer choice system. The schools were still very segregated there, and now they've got a diversity set aside. But sort of to jump off of your last point there, and lasting impact, I'm wondering, the middle school changes are only 1 year, and you keep talking about the possibility for future changes, but sort of long term, what do you hope to accomplish here, or what is the ultimate goal? Can you talk about where you hope this leads?
Yeah, Christina, this is clearly a beginning, and what I think is clear is that unfortunately screens have had the impact of not giving everyone equal opportunity, and this is not our future. Right now, we want to be very methodical and thoughtful about how we move forward. We want to work with school communities. We want to listen to educators and parents. But what is clear is our past involves too much exclusion. Our past involves too much inequality. We need to move to a different place. So the status quo in New York City public schools cannot continue. Obviously, I feel that very deeply with specialized high schools as well. This is a step because it makes sense this year for all the reasons we've outlined, but it's also going to give people a chance to start to experience a new way. And I think as people experience it and see the virtues, there will be more and more faith in the changes. And I think that buy-in and that faith really matters. People will see that the goal has to be a high-quality education for all children and diverse school communities. Those two ideas have to come together for this city to live up to its promise.
A quick programming note, we're also joined today by DOHMH Deputy Commissioner Dr. Hillary Cunnins. The next question is Jessica Gould from WNYC.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the last question. In terms of the middle school screens, how do you respond to those who say that putting a temporary pause on the screens instead of eliminating them altogether, or the high school screens, is passing the buck to the next mayor?
I think this is, again, a really smart action to take now. We will have further decisions going forward because there's a whole year ahead of this administration, the work I'll be doing with this chancellor to determine what makes sense for the future. There's a lot still to play out here. But we do believe, and we've seen the good impact of doing things step by step, and again, getting people acclimated to the changes, getting their buy-in, getting their feedback, figuring out the best way to do things. So this is the step that makes sense now. And then as we evaluate how this goes, and we evaluate, obviously, the other things that we're learning from COVID, the other impacts of COVID, we're going to be able to take additional actions. By the time that I leave the mayoralty, I think we will have put the city on a very different course, certainly vis-a-vis screen schools,